Hey friends, Heath Home here, and welcome to another Sunday Fun Day live stream. Today, nice simple one, straight up one. I'm just going to be exploring a new musical idea today, perhaps something house, something techish, mainly something for the club that I could play in my DJ sets. That's actually generally the sort of tracks I write, unless I'm doing something for one of my other artist projects where I also do sort of ambient and kind of more chilled out stuff. But today, thinking the club, and as I said, something sort of house and techie. Might be deep, maybe the start of a DJ set rather than the peak. Let's see how we go. Of course, as usual, I'll explain what I'm doing along the way. So whether you're completely brand new to music production and Ableton Live, or you're a seasoned pro, I'm sure there'll be some key takeaways for everyone in today's stream. In the end, the goal is, as always, to inspire you to boot up Ableton Live and go and make some music. So feel free to drop any questions you have inside of the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. Also say hello if you're there, if you're with me during the stream. Nice to hear from you. Nice to know where you're listening from, perhaps the music you make. Definitely some nice interaction last week, so onwards and upwards with that. It's always nice to have some good vibes in the chat. A quick one, thank you already to arrive today to see that Lauren Bouchard had written in the chat already. So hi Lauren, I hope you're doing super good. And no doubt it's possibly warm where you are, the same as it is here in Ibiza now. We're in the peak summertime here. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. Without further ado, let's dive in and let's make some music today for the next, I don't know, hour and a half, maybe a couple of hours. We'll see how the idea goes. All right, so we're going to start in Ableton Live with a blank canvas. We're going to choose a tempo. I'm thinking kind of, as I said, maybe early in the set. We can always speed it up a little bit, but maybe we try a whisker under 124. I do like to play my DJ sets around 124 BPM. I'm not sure about you. Let us know in the chat. I noticed, obviously, like I think everybody, that the general trend at the moment is getting faster and faster. So house music, typically at the fast end, would have been 128 BPM. It's now hovering over 130. And of course, lots of other genres going in the same direction. So we're going to keep it maybe early on in the set. And I was thinking today to maybe start off with a musical kind of idea. And I'm thinking to do an ostinato. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of what that is before in music theory, but I think a great example of an ostinato would be Queen, Another One Bites the Dust. It's that constant kind of rhythmical riff or pattern that cycles around. So I'm thinking something like that could be cool today. Let's pick a scale. Let's have maybe E for a change, and we could do E flat as well. This guy here could be interesting, but maybe we do E minor. That's a kind of house music scale, quite a common one that's used a lot. And if we look at the notes in it, we're looking at one octave here, E to E, and we have just the one sharp, the F sharp is part of E minor. So not too difficult to play in the sense of black keys, white keys. So that's the scale E minor. So let's have a go in E minor. And see what we can come up with. Let's try and write then an ostinato, and we might just use the metronome just for the pulse for the moment. And let's say we just pop on again something very simple for now. Perhaps, what sort of synth do we want here? Maybe something where we can get a nice sort of detuned old school kind of sound. Perhaps we'll go for something like analog, let's say. For starters, again, all of this may change as we get going. So E is our root note. So maybe we can start our ostinato on an E. And let's say we even kick it off early. And then we might go up to the third. And let's say we do also, let's change our grid size a little bit here. So we can kind of, we didn't have to go kind of that small. Okay, just so we could do a bit of overlapping here and have some slightly different note lengths. We're going to program these in for the moment. So on ostinato, we might just climb up through the thirds of the scale, let's say, like this. What what else might we want? So we're looking for something, as I said, fairly repetitive. We might, as I said, change our rhythm around. So let's... So we've got like, it's not an arpeggio, but you could also say it could be an arpeggio in a sense, because if we were to, let's say, duplicate this clip here, and we kind of move everything back into shape here, we then just have currently a 5-note chord, right? A little bit of difference on one note length. And if we undo the scale here, so we can see the intervals between, this is the standard first stage of the root triad. This is the root triad here with another fourth or third interval on the top, and this is the only interval that's a little bit different, where we put the octave back in. But all of that could just be one big chord that's then broken up into an arpeggiated chord, which is kind of what we've got here at the moment with this pattern that I've started with, this repetitive climbing up. So it's kind of also like an arpeggio going up. Now let's play around with the synth sound a bit. So we could add the second oscillator to be giving us the seventh, so it's a bit like having a chord. Detune them a bit. Let's introduce some velocity randomization here, so they're not all static like they currently are. So let's select all the notes, pop down to randomize here. Lovely that we've got that straight into the MIDI clip nice and easy in Ableton 12. And we're just going to bring that down a little bit so it's not too wild. And I might manually adjust some of these a little bit myself. This note here, we could try splitting it a bit. Just for a little bit of variation. Now let's say I'd quite like these notes to kind of get a nice kind of glidey bending into each other sort of feel. So at the moment, if we go into the analog and we turn on glide, we don't universally get it right across all the notes, and there's no real sort of overlapping the notes. We want them to sort of glide up from this note to this note, etc. So let's have a look at how we can kind of get that to work. We're also we're not playing chords in this synth. So let's say that we pop into the global shell here and we turn the voices into mono. So it's a monophonic synth. Now we get the glide straight away, right? And then we can bring it to nothing, or we can have, so we can dial it into taste. All right, so let's swap our metronome. That was just super rough, just for, again, some sort of placeholder for now. So let's have You've possibly seen me use it quite a lot. I like the drum synth kick as a great way to get a little kick drum going into the project. And they also sound really good once you shape the kick in this plugin. It's a really good little device, and great for getting, as I said, a placeholder kick or even the final kick, depending on what you're going for in your track. Let's say that inside of our scale, we'll tune our kick to the scale. Do we have an F, which is the default that the kick drum sampler is tuned to, right? Without me touching anything, it's in F0. So just a quick check to E minor. If we pop things into the scale, we don't. We have F sharp or G, so, or E. I think an F sharp kick or a G kick would be great here. So we can go then to the drum synth and just change the pitch to either an F sharp, just dragging up here, or a G. I happen to like G kicks, so I'm going to start with a G. It's the third interval in the scale. Add a bit of click. Punch if we want. Just a nice tight short kick for now. Okay, back over to our synth. Let's play around with this a bit more. So we've got our glide working. We've got a little bit of detuning the oscillators. We put oscillator 2 upper 7th. 2 saw waves, or square and saw. We could also take one of these saw waves and go down an octave. So maybe we go for that sort of sound and we don't tune it upper 7th and down an octave. So if you're going for something a bit quirkier, we can sort of kind of make a chord within the synth, right? We're adding to the notes here. We're adding a pitch down an octave and we're adding a third up above the notes as well. So it gives you a different sound. Instead of writing a chord, we're actually kind of making that chord, let's say, by the tuning of the different oscillators, and we get this different sound from that. And it's a technique that's used by deadmau5 and Chris Stussy and many, many great producers, because it's a way where we've, since working with hardware synths and instruments, it's a way where perhaps we had a monophonic synth and we couldn't play chords. That means we can't play more than one voice at the same time, but we can kind of not fake it, but kind of, where we're actually just still playing single notes, but we're tuning the oscillators apart, which gives us this lovely sound, and we're actually kind of making a bit of a chord shape, right? Let's keep it not too quirky. We'll just have the down an octave, I think sounds nice. Let's work on the envelope a bit. So we'll just start with the amp envelope, the volume envelope a bit, and the filter section a little bit. Okay, a little bit of processing. We could add a beat repeat here. Could be really fun for switching up the pattern a bit in a moment. Let's have a chorus. Thicken up the sound a little bit. And let's pop in a little bit of a echo on here. think I might have shown before in some of my sound design videos that the beat repeat, it says beat in the name. Don't let that hold you back. Obviously, it's a great for making little beat variations and things like that, but it's a fantastic little effect that you can try in other places, such as now we're creating little interesting note changes within the ostinato pattern that I've kind of programmed in today. And so we've now got this nice little fills. I started to adjust it a little bit here. I've said no triplets, vary up what you do each time. So the grid size, which is here, has now got some variation. So randomly that varies. You can obviously have it more times randomly vary or less, that's up to you. And then we can change a lot about like how often the repeats happen, where they happen within the grid, so which sixteenths, how long the notes are on the repeat, and all that kind of fun stuff in there. So don't sleep on the beat repeat for adding variation to audio loops, to MIDI loops, basses, synths, chords, whatever it might be. Try it out. I want it a little bit less frequent. Gonna bring my echo back. Bring the glide down. Let's try out a few things here. So let's now say we take this pattern, we make it a few bars long. Let's go for 4. Just going to turn off the repeat for a second while I mess around. Get more glide if we overlap them a little bit. And what I might try and do is a bit of what's called a polymeter, where I'm going to make all of these notes come in slightly at a different timing to the first. Okay, that's interesting. Let's try copying this down. So another clip variation of this. And in that one, let's try all the notes a lot shorter. So let's pop into our view down here. Yeah, so this is more the polymeter feel now, as I make the pattern change where it's coming back around again. And we need to, that last one's not quite right. Let's just undo that. Oops. Let's try and lasso all these guys together. There we go. Do it again, and now we need to move them over a little bit. there, I believe. This one also needs to come over. Now we've got it, I think. Nice, quite like this. A bit different to what we started with, but a little bit more unique. Let's say we duplicate it again another time. And I heard something good before when I started to move up through the scale a bit. So maybe we'll set up the next section to change. And maybe we just need only one of those, perhaps. Or something like that even. All right, nice. This one here could probably change again to another part of the chord progression perhaps. So this one goes B down to the G. So in a moment we might do some chords, I feel, that are going to go with this, but we might just try and see if we can tidy up just the end of this pattern. So here's the simple pattern, and now we've got this longer clip. We've also got the original down here. So So I think arguably we've gone in a nice direction here. We've improved that a bit into something a bit more interesting with shorter notes. And changing where the pattern cycles around. So as you can see, it kind of starts a little bit on the second note of the ostinato, and here it kind of completes its cycle and then leaves the first note. So we've got this interesting kind of cycle in the pattern differently to how it was working in the start. Okay, so maybe over here we could have some chords. What have we got here on the kind of root notes, let's say? So we could kind of say that this one has, we know that E is the root note. Here we would have some different changes of the, perhaps in the idea of a chord progression. So let's maybe just do a bit of a 4-bar chord progression. Start with the root chord triad. And sometimes when you want to look at the chord type or quality here, when you've got everything sort of in scale mode, it's great if you're not coming at this from, let's say, a professional music theory background or something like that. But what you can't see is whether this is a major or a minor chord, as everything's being kind of forced into being a chord that works in that scale. So if we undo this, we can kind of see that E is E minor, right? So if we kind of move that across and choose our next chord shape, what's our movement? If we stay with the second chords here, we would actually have a diminished chord, which is going to sound quite tense. So maybe our second chord in the progression, we might not want to jump straight to a diminished chord. And if we went to chord 3, we've got a major chord, so we're going minor, major. A moment ago we were minor, diminished. So these are sort of things you might want to sometimes take a look at by undoing the, for a second, the scale help, so you can kind of see what's going on in this, in the case of what is the chord quality. Yes, the chords will work, but here we get a bit more information, some proper music theory information. So here I'm going minor, minor, and I might actually pop that up to revoice it. So that's a nice smooth chord change there. We've got a common top note here, which is great. Let's now say we're going minor, minor. Do we throw in a major here? Do we throw in the diminished? Do we have another minor and finish with a major at the end? So perhaps if we were to put chord 2 here, we've then got that diminished chord. We have a mutual note now in the middle there, so that's voiced kind of quite smoothly. So that could be interesting. And maybe we finish with another minor chord at the end here. So in that case, which chord are we going to be using? That's our minor chord. So this one would work, the C minor here, or C major that is actually, so that's not quite what we're looking for. So B minor is definitely one of the chord options here. That is a minor chord. We get common middle note again. So this has voiced itself quite nicely in the sense of all those chords voicing really nicely. They're sharing common notes. And we've gone kind of minor, minor, diminished, and then minor again, and we've used some inversions to kind of smooth that out a bit. All right, let's give it an instrument. So we have wavetable on our chords, but need to be in the instrument folder. Now I kind of wrote this in reverse to how I would sometimes. I probably would have done the chords first and then put the ostinato against the chords. And here there is a chord that doesn't work, and it's the diminished one. It's a bit too gnarly for my taste. It's a bit too tense. So here we want definitely, again, in theory, we've used our 3 minor chords. So we kind of probably want to have a major chord here of some sort. So let's look at our different major chords. So that would be one of them there, which is almost a copy of this one. So that should voice quite nicely. Change the chord shape of this one to have it a little bit different to what it was. So we need to keep working on this middle one because I'm not quite sold on that yet. I mean, that chord sounded okay, but then this chord didn't kind of work at the very end. So maybe we'll have a listen to just those three for a second. Yeah, still not really right. So let's start from scratch here. Okay, so just while we're having a look here on the inversions, etc. So that was B minor there, okay, with for an inversion. So just checking what chord I've done. So we've gone 1 to the 5, that's this movement, but the 5 is in an inversion like this. So if we make this one the 4 chord, which is C, we now should have, before we voice it, and it is a major. Okay, so that voice is okay. What are our other options? We could drop down to the 3rd, which we've kind of not used the B. It looks like we have, or we did, right? Because we inverted the B already up here. So we've already used that 3rd chord with an inversion. So 7, 6, 5. We've used, it's the 4. So if we come all the way down to A, so that's sounding a little bit better for me. We've got another inversion again to kind of get it together. No common notes. We'll look at that in a moment. So we could revoice that a little bit. And then where were we going to go from the 4? If we're going to have a 4-note chord progression. So we're going 1, 5, 4. Well, often a good place to go from there would be the 6, which would be the chord C. So we'll just pop down to the C, which in its default state would be looking like that. So we've now got decent voicing going on here with these chords, figuring it out. We've got a progression as well, 1, 5, sort of 4, and then 6. Looks a little bit, you have to sort of follow it along carefully because there's inversions here to make everything kind of smoothly fit together. Now, when you have chords like this where they don't have a common note, that is, you know, none of these notes change in the same position, like this chord changes to this chord in the sharing the top note, that's how you voice chords so they sound really smooth. These two chords actually share 2 notes in common, both the low note of the chord and the middle note, so they're voiced great. So what we might try and do is connect this chord to this chord here somewhere. So what we could do is just kind of make a new little chord here somewhere where maybe we bring like a note like the F over. So let's maybe just start a new note here. And then we could pull back, say, the E. You could leave some of the notes long notes if you like, but you can also split them and turn it into a proper new little chord like that. So now we've got a connection between these two chords here, and then we've got our new chord, and that is connected again in two places, right? So we've revoiced it in a way that we smoothed it out, and we've got a connection between those two. Now you could do it differently. So we could make the connection here, right? So the D's overlap, and the F could go somewhere else. You could try what I've just done here, because we've got common notes again at the top, right? So there's different possibilities. Just compare them. So another option we've got is this one down. Just watch out we don't remove the other note. Something like that. I think that's my favorite out of that. We could then decide a little bit, but like before with the ostinato, we might copy this down, and let's say we do something like, we might do some variations of these chords now. So we might have some short chords perhaps. Quite nice with the rest there. Change up the rhythm a little bit in places. Just trying out some different positions in the octaves that these instruments are currently in. So again, you know, the two original clips that I started things out in, pretty vanilla, right? So if we come back to these two, we might use them again, but it just, you know, it's nice to kind of have those as your starting point, and now we've kind of evolved them by chopping these up into kind of a different rhythm harmonically in both cases, and the ostinato's got two variations to it as well. So just fixing up, there's a little bit of a few gaps in here, but it's not, doesn't have to be perfect. These little notes here, let's try it inverted. Play around with that a little bit later. And then again, because these are all programmed, I'd like to get some feeling into that. So I'm going to use the, you know, built-in velocity randomization tools. If not, I would be 100% reaching for, from the MIDI effects folder, the velocity device. So you can do this two ways, and pop that in front of the instrument, bring in the high and low to the range of velocity that you wish to have. So perhaps not hitting as hard as it could, and perhaps not going completely to silence. So if we have like 40 at the bottom end of the range, then we go down to softer notes, and if we go 118 or something at the top, then we don't go all the way to the hardest note, and then we can randomize here on the randomization knob, and we move around that line, that range, a little bit of variation. So the wavetable now sounds more interesting. And here it's very static. Okay, let's make a wavetab a bit more interesting. Sorry about that. Have in mind a sound I'm looking for. Might be this one. I actually didn't mind it back here. Let's get a bit of modulation happening on our filter frequency. Okay, so the tuning of those don't work at this point in time, but that's okay. Just simplifying that a bit, quite like that. So we're getting lots of kind of options here. So let's color this clip a bit differently, even more different than that. So I'm already preparing the work that I've just done here because it's just kind of giving things a lot more space. It also means I could kind of incorporate something else here which I have in mind. So let's say we try another MIDI track here, and let's grab something like maybe Drift for a change in our instrument folder. All right. And on the Drift, let's try something. I mean, you know, music, just want to point out, like music production, doing this kind of thing today, I'm just the luxury of making music here and just exploring a new idea. It should be fun. And it also should be, you should be kind of, if you can, trying to explore, finding surprises, trying to uncover something that, you know, at the moment I'm working really hard on new music ideas when I'm doing them in my own time, trying to do things that I don't normally do, moves that I don't normally do. If I think I want to do that, I try to do something else. It's kind of in those, between those posts is where you kind of tend to find the surprises in music that tend to catch the A&R's ears of the record label and other DJs and producers and the audience. You know, maybe sometimes it's a classical approach that gets you the right answer, beautiful chords, a beautiful melody, beautiful vocal, and sometimes it could be a sound designy thing or a happy accident, creating something that you don't normally do, you don't normally program. You've kind of set yourself up to do something that, you know, something new happens from it. Big fan of that. And I believe in there, in between those posts are a lot of things that could bring you perhaps the success you're looking for in the industry. All right, so Drift. Let's just have a single note. We're in E minor. Let's throw in a root note somewhere. What I want to do with Drift is kind of use the filter, the filter to try and make it resonate and see what happens when we make the filter's resonance. All the way to the max on the resonance of the filter. And we can even switch off the tones, right? We know we've got a note there. And that sound is just the filter creating a tone, right? And if we kind of know what frequencies equal what note, so for example, we could try a couple of things here. If we don't know that, we could perhaps try putting a tuner behind. And we see we're almost getting a D, right? D, C sharp. So you can kind of tune this. I think around 253 is C. So let's see, can we get it into a C? pretty close, right? So if you have a little chart or something like that, you can look these things up, but you can also kind of use something like a tuner and kind of see, you know, what notes you're getting out of it. So that frequency at 253 kilohertz is around a C3, right? And so that's what's happening. The filter's kind of creating that. And this is, by the way, how you make those kind of zappy kind of, or one way to make those kind of really kind of zappy sounds. So if we play around with the envelope that's attached to the filter, which have got resonance and frequency at the moment. Also 2 types of filter. Maybe preferring the seconds. So then that's... So we're almost going to get a drum sound down here with a very tight envelope. So almost like a tom drum, right? Some kind of electronic kind of drum percussion. So let's double the frequency. Let's go up for a higher note. So 250, 500, somewhere around there. So you can see again, we're pretty close to the C. I did say why bother doing all of this, but it's an interesting tone, right? It's something completely different, and it's the filter and the resonance of the filter that's giving us that note at the moment. And with the envelope, can make it really so I think if you're a Star Wars fan, you can probably hear what they were doing, right? To make some of the sounds of some of their characters. So let's have a bit of a tone from the filter and then bring back in a tone from an oscillator. So we're layering them. Bit of noise oscillator. We've also got oscillator 1. If we don't want, we can take it out. Then it's noise just with the filter. Could do a bass down there. Changing the shape of the oscillator if we wish. All right, let's try something where we put an LFO modulating this frequency a bit. Then we would get almost perhaps something like a melody a little bit here. So it's now not going to stay in a constant note. So it's now moving this frequency pitch around, and you see here we were getting some different note names, so you can do all sorts of kind of fun stuff if you want to play around with that and get some interesting results. You can almost get a little melody happening where this frequency of the filter that's resonating, making that tone, is moving around. Definitely interesting. So I'm just trying to tone it down so it kind of ends up being something kind of musical. So this little drift part, it's kind of interesting, right? And it's all about just showing you how you can get a tone out of a self-oscillating filter, as it's known, and the drift does it. And we've added oscillator 1 to give it a tone alongside the frequency of the filter. Also a bit of noise. And there's an LFO, which is kind of adding some nice kind of movement and wobble to it. No processing yet, right? So, you know, if we were to kind of give it a bit of reverb and some kind of character to it as well. All right, let's carry on with the surprises. Just working on getting that drift, that little resonating filter into something that's kind of musical. Took a little bit of work there, but I think we're there. So let's just do a bit of housekeeping here so we know what's what. We've got chords. We've got kind of an ostinato idea that kind of kick-started with today, and now we've got a resonating filter. I don't know, we could call it a bleep if we like, something like that. We've got a kick at the moment, that's all we've got. So let's maybe work on a bit of percussion then. Work on the drums a little bit. We also don't have a bass line at this point in time, so it might be nice to come up with one of those in a little bit. So what's something else we could play around with that we're sort of a little bit of sound designing, trying out some new things here. What about the, let's do a Command F. Let's have the rotating rhythm generator is what we're looking for. This bad boy. All right, and let's maybe try it with a drum rack of some sort. Let's clear that again. Start from scratch. Some drum racks that I've kind of bookmarked. Let's try a percussion rack first. Well, let's just say we have just the one to start with. And what should be, what I'm thinking is going to be interesting here with the drum rack, I'll just show you with an empty rack, is if we put this rotating rhythm generator here, it's got 4 sections, let's say. And if we look here at the first section that I've kind of left activated, it's in C1. So whatever's down on the pad C1, in theory, whatever we set this to do should be triggering that pad. And then you can see that section 2 could be a different note, and you can change that note, and then 3 and then 4. So we could kind of, in theory, have some different rhythmical interplay between some different sounds, which is my thoughts here with some drums, see what we can come up with here. So let's try it out. Let's try another note. So now the thing is we could randomize the note here. I think what I'm going to do here, like the idea is there, but this drum kit, let's see if we can find another one that's a little bit more kind of got more samples in it. We might make our own. Already interesting because it's kind of pulling out a pad sound from that. But yeah, we might go a different route. It was something I wanted to try. I think for now, next time, maybe I'll pick out a drum kit that sort of, I think, as I said, is really populated, and then try and get an interplay between a couple of the sounds. Or let's just see, just in case. I mean, as I said, the other way is for us to make our own. Yeah, definitely think it would be better off kind of, if we're going to try the experiments, go for something a little bit more experimental. Just throw a whole bunch of percussion sounds in here. See what happens now. Right, so if you're into sort of things like polyrhythms where you get one rhythmical pattern playing against another, this can be kind of coming up with some interesting results. And we're only using 2 of the rhythm generator sections, so there could be 4. The idea with the drum rack was to be able to populate it with lots of samples, and then we can kind of surf through the note pitch of each section and choose out the sample we're looking for, and then we can play around with all these parameters such as, you know, swinging, changing the length of the sample, the velocity of the sample, and then turning on this Euclidean section down the bottom here for further development of that kind of cyclical rhythm. But, you know, we get this kind of interesting layering happening and interplay between the 2 rhythms, and if we like, we can then go into, you know, the individual samples themselves. This is one of them here. So which one is this? I think no, so that's just the other one. So this is section 1. So we could kind of treat it like a normal sample as it's in a simpler. Repitch it a bit if we wish. Let's process it slightly. Adjust it. Well, let's actually, we can do a bit of random panning inside of there. So the trick is perhaps just not to, you know, plonk the rhythm generator on there. It's also to get the 2 sounds kind of, you know, how you want them to sound individually and then work together as a pair as well. So let's kind of also normalize the volume on this. So now I'm working on the other sound that's in the rack here. So that's the kind of cowbelly one, and this one is the other sound. So you get this really nice meter that's going on. This is one of the sounds, and then the bell is our other sound. So then you can work on those two sounds together, but it's quite a nice way to come up with an interplay between sounds in a rhythmical way that perhaps, again, you don't think of kind of doing if you're just programming into a clip. All right, let's do a bit more conventional sort of sounds, let's say. Let's have maybe a look for a clap of sorts. Just tuning and adjusting my clap a little bit. Think about a little bit of maybe raw on it. Dirty it up a little bit. Maybe a bit of erosion as well, or actually we might go for redux. Just want to kind of lo-fi it a little bit. Let's turn the processing off on the claps. Or the clap, should I say. Yeah, it's got a nice bit of character to it now that it didn't a moment ago. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. Let's get some hi-hats in here, I think. What are we going for, hi-hat style? Could try something like a noise hi-hat that we make ourselves. Let's try that first. It's a bit of analog. Just one oscillator. By the way, if you are here in the stream today, do say hello in the chat. It's very quiet in there. Perhaps you're all busy getting ready for the Euro final or things like that. It is a Sunday afternoon, but if you're watching on replay, I hope you do find this interesting. It's just a music making session today and beneficial. Some of the things I'm trying out here, perhaps it inspires you to give that a go yourself. And as always, I did notice a little bit that there's a lot of people viewing my videos that aren't subscribed to the channel. Would really appreciate it if you give the videos a thumbs up if you're enjoying the video and the content on the channel, and of course do consider subscribing. It does help the channel grow and I appreciate it a lot. All right, let's crack on here. So we're going to turn oscillator 1 into just noise. Let's maybe do a fast hat and then we might change it to, well, let's start with offbeat. Just a simple offbeat hi-hat. Let's bring the volume down a bit. And now let's shape our envelope a bit. The advantage of doing it in the synth is we've got a lot of shaping possibilities. Maybe we can also repitch it a little bit. playing around with my wavetable, could develop that a little bit. Saw a question pop up in the chat there. Felix W, I hope you're doing well. Is the 12 suite, does it have Granulator 3? It does indeed. Part of the update to Live 12 is our friends Granulator 3 over here. Great device. Perhaps we can do something with that as a last little piece of today's action here, if you like. But it does indeed, and it's a great update. So what I was just messing around with there, went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, as we do sometimes. Literally, I'll start again, but I was here with my analog hi-hat. And you might notice on the envelope of the volume here, if we move the decay around, we can get that really nice kind of feeling, which we could leave alone and automate, you know, in the arrangement of the song, but we could also add an LFO and map it to that decay and kind of get this little bit of it opening and closing by itself. And if we put a random waveform on it, then that action's very random. So very tiny hi-hats and then bigger hi-hats, and we can kind of tone it down. It's a bit wild at the moment. So let's say we bring the offset around a bit. That means then it won't open as far as it could. It will open between 0 and a smaller value, and we can bring the depth down. So it's now got a little bit of variation to it, right? It's not the same constant hi-hat. The decay is opening and closing ever so slightly. How much you want it to open and close is kind of decided in here, and then how fast it happens is the rate knob. So if I go note sync, we can even make it happen every quarter note, so it's very rhythmical, or every eighth note or something like that, or we can leave it in frequency, so it's a little bit more random again. And if we put it in remote, you can actually see here how much it's moving the decay around. So this is the LFO that's taken over this. So if we want it to open up further, now it's getting bigger values, right? So longer hi-hats. And if we go this way, we're going to shorten the range of where it's focusing around that, right? So only small hats opening and closing. Here we've got a bit more range. Here a lot more range. So you can play around with that and dial that into taste. But we've now got ourselves a modulating hi-hat as well. So let's get something for the granulator. Felix W, well, cool, thanks. Thinking about upgrading. Yeah, it's a great, as I said, Granulator 2 was a great device, but yeah, Granulator 3, another kind of level here. So let's say we pop into the packs of Ableton Live Suite, see if we can find ourselves a sample that we could perhaps use inside of the Granulator. So let's clear one shots. Let's get into the all search, and let's have maybe a loop. Let's try something perhaps sustained. And I think we've got a D in our scale, so we should be okay with that. Yeah, we do have a D in our E minor that we're working in. So granulator, essentially, Felix, it kind of looks the same, but it's kind of how you, took me a little bit to figure out a little bit how you kind of get some of the sections to modulate and do that kind of thing inside. But the sort of section down the bottom here, we've got a couple of different options as well. Like it goes deeper than it did before, but our file position, scan, grain size and shape, they're all kind of pretty important. They're all here on the left. We can vary that a bit. change the pitch, spread it out. And then we've got the LFO, and it's kind of how we apply that and what we apply it to. So let's maybe see if we can find something interesting in here. So what I might actually do before I keep going, I'm going to bring that over. I'm not actually sure if I can do it inside of here. I don't think I can. So I'm going to actually reverse this and then bring it into the granulator, because I kind of feel that could be interesting. So the scan and the position and the grain size, they work like they always have done. I'm kind of happy with that. So you can see when I click in around here, I bring up some envelopes and the LFO, this modulation section, right? And then you can kind of see that if you were working with the LFO over here, you've got frequency amount, and then you've got applying the LFO. So it kind of takes a little bit to kind of figure out, you know, which section is which. So you've got up here the sample itself, and then you've got the modulation panels, right? Really nice. You can also, don't really have time for it today in the stream, but you can also record kind of directly into here now. So you can set it up to capture audio from another track and actually route the source straight into the Granulator 3. So like I said, there are some great things here. We used to be able to do that, but that required like 2 devices, another device on the audio output that sent that output to here. Whereas we don't really need to do that, right? We could actually start with a clean granulator and record into here. So if we do a quick example of that, let's say we clear the granulator, start with a default one, we turn it to in and out, we could now say, okay, listen to the chord track. Let's have the chords on. And it's as quick as that. You know, I've captured some of the chords into the granulator just like that. I can even save that to my library if I want. Really interesting stuff there. So yeah, the capture is really interesting because, like I said, it's all built into the one device now, and you can just kind of bring the sample from somewhere in your project straight into here, capture it. You can then save it in, make your own samples out of that. So very cool and interesting workflow. I might just try that again. So Felix, that is really cool. I think I'll upgrade. Thanks for the demo. You're very welcome regarding the demo. Let's see if I can make something that kind of makes sense for the track. So this is the part that took me a while to understand. So if I start moving the filter here, all of the parts along the top here are what would then modulate that, right? So if you click somewhere else, you're noticing in this section here, things are changing, and they're all then related to modulating these elements. So if I want the filter frequency to be moving like this with an LFO, if I click it, then I could see here, I could now bring up the LFO amount here, and that would then be added to that filter frequency. So what have we got currently in the LFO? Let's maybe shape it so we can kind of hear it. Let's make it fast. I was just trying to make it like something quite obvious so you can hear. So the cool thing is, as I said, if you want to modulate things, you see the section here that matches then what you can apply to that. So if you want to move the transposition and modulate it, so things can get very, very wild in here. You can take it a long, long way. It goes very, very deep. I'm not sure I've got something that's super musical there though. Take me a while to get my head around what I might incorporate in here with the granulator. But good shout, great device, absolutely love it. Could do a whole track and do a whole session just messing around with the granulator. Super powerful. I love adding vocals to it. It's one of my favorite things to do. Let's see if we can get a bass line before we wrap it up today. So something like a nice deep kind of low bass would be cool. And maybe we do it with a sequencer for something of interest. Instead of playing it, we're doing a bit of program today, but maybe we'll sequence the bass line. So bring in our friend from the MIDI effects, the melodic steps. It's in C1 right now. That's the beginning of the pitch. So we want to change that. Let's make it minor and let's make it E1, which is we're in E minor. We could even have E2, somewhere in that kind of range. Play around with the sequencer to it's already quite nice, just a very nice kind of muted chugging low bass. Let's get a bit of processing behind the sequencer, but I'm already kind of quite happy with that. I messed around a little bit here with the velocity. This melodic steps device is really great. I put it into the key and the scale up here. If you roll the dice, which you see along here, if you click the X in the circle, you reset that line. So currently we have a little bit of differences in octaves. And then you basically circle cross resets it, 2 dice, roll it, but don't roll it too random, and 5 dice, obviously more extreme on the randomization. 2 is how many steps are showing, so maximum here would be 16 steps, so you can reveal all those steps if you wish, but we're currently just very small octave change between 2 steps. Transposition, I've done no pitch at the moment. The note lengths are all the same, so we could bring in some variation. Just clicking here, that would mean the notes would now have different variations in length. Again, if we don't like that, we can reset it with the circle and the cross. 5 gives you more, as I said, randomization, and then you've got the chance of things happening. Again, all the same thing, and the number of steps. So you can really vary things up a lot here. So velocity is currently different on 15 of the steps. And obviously none of these are matching, so there's lots of kind of variation going on within the device. It's a very cool little device. Let's bring some raw in. I'd like some crunch again, so I might try again the Redux. Play around with the filter section as well. Could also have the triangle wave. Gives us a bit more harmonics than a sine. I actually think with his chord track, the way the track's kind of gone, to make it more of a bit of a droney sort of sound here, I don't think I want those fast kind of plucky chords. I feel like the track has got a nice kind of now undergroundy sort of tech house kind of feel to it, like this. So I think I would be going for a slow kind of droney type sound here. So let's see if we can come up with that with the same instrument. We might just use the original chords. Something like that. That's just a very quick go at it. Felix, I'm struggling with bass and kick bleed. Okay, so your bass and kick are not fitting together well, I take it. Are the notes overlapping? Is the kick and bass overlapping, or are they giving each other a really nice hug? I mean, that's the optimum, is a kick and bass that sort of sit together super nice and give each other a hug. So in this case, with this long kind of chords I've got right now, they will be absolutely clashing with the kick. So if we were to take all of these notes and bring them back at the start, we would be clearing space for some kicks, right? But in this case, with this particular pattern I've got here, the lower I go down, the closer I get into the range of the bass and the kick. But a sidechain compressor would be a good answer on this particular, what I've just sort of started to create here. So perhaps we give it a little bit of sidechain so you can kind of catch how that's going to help this particular part. But I wouldn't reach for a sidechain compressor as the fix every single time, but in this case there's a lot of overlap between this chord track now and the kick drum. So we don't have to pump this chord track if we don't want to, but so if we listen to the kick, obviously this isn't a bass, it is a chord track. It's getting low though. So if we put the kick and the bass together, they're fitting pretty good around each other. The main thing I made sure here was a little bit that I wasn't in E1. So again, I've spread my kick is really low and I'm in the next octave with the bass. If I go E1, kind of fits. Kick's a little bit weaker, but we get much better separation. If we can come up into that next octave, right? Kick and the bass sit together much nicer there. And this guy that I'm just working on at the moment, it gets down into a 2 here. So it does just sneak down in the same octave. The bass is here, down in E. So there's a bit of separation and the kicks are happening, you know, all through here. Like so, right? But they are down another octave. They're right down in here. So that's the key. One of the key things you can do there is obviously make sure you're using all of the piano roll and all of the octaves to your favor. And then this one, as I said, I'm going to sidechain a little bit. Help the kick own that space. Kind of happy with the direction that we ended up. So that sounds great. Can you use sidechain on the master track? You could, but I wouldn't advise it. What you want to do if you're thinking of it in that way, where you might want to apply it in more situations that just, for example, I've just added it to the chords here, this track. I'm going to call it, rename it while we're housekeeping. I'm just going to call it a drone now. It's just a single note that's sustained. Perhaps, you know, obviously I'm trying to wrap up the stream shortly, but I will give you just a few pointers. If you do what I've done here, the compressor is currently listening to the kick that I've got in the track here, and that's what it's sidechained to. There's an advantage to that because obviously it is the kick in the current project, in this idea here, but the disadvantage would be, imagine if we were now working on the arrangement of our song and the kick stops playing in a breakdown, then this drone would no longer have any sidechain source anymore because the kick isn't playing anymore. So the idea of a separate track for the sidechain compressor, so having your own dedicated track in your project where the sidechain compressor lives, is an absolutely excellent idea instead of on the master track. So quickly, what we can do here, we can actually set one up here. So we can go a brand new MIDI track, right? Copy our kick pattern onto it. So literally, we've just got our 4/4 kick here. It was in MIDI, right? And so we've got our kick pattern here, and we're going to call this track the sidechain, so SC for short. We're going to do one thing. We're going to make sure that it's switched on, but we don't want to hear any notes from this track. So we're going to send the output, right? We want to send it, first of all, we're going to put any instrument on it, so it's going to play a note. Let's just have the operator. So we're going to give it an instrument as well, but we don't want to hear it, right? So it's got something that's going to play back those notes. So, right, so we've got a sidechain source there. The advantage actually of doing the sidechain in MIDI like this is you can then actually make an advanced sidechain where you can then shape what exactly the sidechain sounds like. So maybe we make it very plucky, the sidechain source, or maybe it's more. So let's say it's a plucky note like that. That's the advantage of the synth, doing it with MIDI and a synth. We don't want to hear this, right? This track here, but we want it switched on. So what we're going to do is we're going to send it to the sends only. And now when we push play, it's blue. We don't hear it. We don't need to hear it. Now what we can do is on the drone track, is the audio can now come from the sidechain, and now we can use that track for any other compressors that we want to sidechain to, right? And we're not relying on the kick track. If the kick track happens to come out in breakdowns and things like this, well, we can make sure that sidechain track doesn't. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. So if you were in the arrangement view and we copy that MIDI over here and we've got our dedicated sidechain track, then you can just drag that out, right across your whole song if you wish, and you've got that sidechain. And of course, it can go a lot more advanced than that, but that just gives you a bit of a clue. A separate sidechain track is a really good idea. Not on the master track, doing something like this where you've got a global sidechain track that you can sidechain many sources to, and you can decide whether it is missing at any point or not. In this case, it doesn't have to go missing at all during a break. Things will keep sidechaining. So I hope that helps. That sounds great. Can you? I don't have the separate tracks. I only have one mixed down audio track. Cool. I think you got me, Felix. So hopefully, yes, is the answer to that. So let's do a quick little recap. As I said in the end, there's been a few changes here and there, but I really do like where the ideas kind of ended up. I'm just going to tidy things up so we know what is what. Gets a little bit mad here and there. So the drone now is a chord progression that I wrote that I'm just following some of the notes of it. Would definitely elaborate on this, but I feel like this guy here was nice, but I don't think it fits the direction of the track anymore. So what did I begin with? I began with this kind of ostinato pattern. This pattern here was the start point for today. And again, I've played around with that. We've got quite a few variations of it. We've got a more fuller. With a kind of wonky timing. And we've got another one of those that then actually pitches up as well. So we've certainly got range of movement here. Right, so that one goes climbing, but one is just a nice simplified version of it, which fits really nicely into gives the rest of the stuff things to breathe. So often, sometimes you get carried away, you make a really busy pattern, and then the right answer is actually just to simplify it a bit, but at least we know we've got variations in the bank here if we wish to use them. I also made the synth from scratch, was looking for a bit of an old school kind of analog feel to it, detuned. It's gliding, so it's got that kind of glide up to the notes. We've also got a beat repeat on there, which is giving us some nice juggling notes not all the time, just every now and then, bit of chorus, bit of echo. I then did make the chord progression right down here. Sorry, the orange. Voiced it all out nicely, showed you kind of how to do that, showed you how to make a chord voice better by making two chords. Then I kind of turned it into choppy, glitchy kind of chords. And now I've kind of ended up just using, say, the root note of the chords as a bit of a drone, which I think fits the track idea the best. Then I actually played around with a fun one with drift, where I've kind of made the whole synth sound out of a self-oscillating filter. Check that out if you're interested in learning. It's a filter where we've turned the resonance all the way to the max. That's given us our oscillator tone almost. Then we've actually added an oscillator to that and some noise to get the final sound. And that sounds like this. It's kind of nice wonky, bleepy sound. And we've got a bit of reverb and echo on it to make it kind of also move around. The drone, by the way, we didn't hear how it sounds, but it's also got modulation, so it sounds like it's more plucky, like plucky notes than it is. If we take the LFO out from here, you can hear it's just very sustained. So we can play around with that. We could bring that a bit more subtle, actually. And then I messed around with what was next. I think I just added a kick drum nice and fast. I then played around with the rotating rhythm generator here. Look for a drum rack. I ended up using an empty one, populated it with lots of percussion sounds. And then I've just used two sections of the rhythm generator to get this interplay between two random percussion sounds. And we end up with this kind of cool polyrhythm between the two sounds. And then I've kind of processed the two sounds a bit differently as well, because they're individual sounds in the rack here. So one of them, the more bell-like one, you can probably hear it, it's panning around and it's got a bit of delay on it. So both those sounds are doing their own thing. Then I kind of added a clap, and then I've made my own hi-hat from analogs, just noise, right? So all together, what do we have? And also I would move this hi-hat. We've got two variations of the pattern. It is this one that I wanted, actually. And then I just created a bass quite recently, operator bass. Let's bring that pluck back a little bit here. Let's try it a little bit faster. So there we go, ladies and gents. That's going to be a wrap for today. I mean, as always, it's been a pleasure to share some music with you on this Sunday afternoon. And if you're watching back on repeats, another day, another time, well, I hope you enjoy this stream. I hope you find it beneficial, whether you're new to Ableton Live or you're a seasoned pro. Maybe something that I was doing in here inspired you or helped you find out something that you didn't previously know. Small favor to ask on that account: if you are enjoying the content on the channel and this video, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, drop us a comment, subscribe to the channel. It's all much appreciated. I did notice that in the back end there's a lot of you watching the videos, which is amazing, but not subscribed to my channel, so it always would be a big favor if you would consider doing that, obviously. On that note, I'm going to wish you an awesome rest of your Sunday, of course, and again, next weekend at the same time, at this point in time, will be the next live stream. I will also put a video at the end here, one that I would suggest that you would probably enjoy if you found this one interesting. I'll put a link here to another video that go and check it out. I'm sure you'll find some more interesting stuff in there that'll lead you down a music production rabbit hole. So this is Heath Holmes signing out. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care of yourselves and see you again soon. Ciao for now. Bye-bye. Ciao.